Alright everyone, now we have an unhappy story here actually. Another man shot and killed by Antifa in the last few hours actually in Portland. The only advantage time-wise for me being in this time zone is that here early in the morning when I get up, it's right when the rioting is happening in most parts of the United States because of the time zone difference, especially the West Coast, which is where half of this shit's happening. Portland is a cesspit. It's run by an idiot mayor. It's completely overrun by stupidity, and what's happened here is that because the police are largely held back by the far-left political complex there from actually intervening when there's rioting, groups, militias, have moved in to try to restore some semblance of order. One of those groups is Patriot Prayer, and that apparently is being reported as a group that this individual that was shot was a member of. You've had rioting and looting there now for, basically 3 months, in the wake of George Floyd's fentanyl overdose, which is what kicked all this off. The legacy media has used the violence in Kenosha and elsewhere to try to fan the flames of hate because they like juicy stories like this. The legacy media, even the New York Times actually reporting on this. You know why? Because it's juicy. Of course, the caveat being, well, yeah, but the dude who was shot was a member of this far-right evil militia. Well, that's not really what Patriot Prayer appears to be about. It's interesting how a group that openly proclaims that what it's about is primarily property defense in this situation is treated so unfavorably, even though one of their dudes was the one that actually got killed, as opposed to a group like Antifa, which in their own manifestos is expressly violent, doesn't hide that fact actually, and you have various footage here of them cheering the fact that this dude was shot and killed. You don't see these right-wing militias, so-called, or people that are just going in to try to defend businesses. Sometimes, I'm sure, friends and relatives own them. When somebody from Antifa or something is shot, it's not seen as something that they necessarily cheer about. Because the stereotype is like they're like all roided up and they're completely nuts and they cheer, oh, we're going to kill the communists and stuff. And there are plenty of tongue-in-cheek jokes on the internet about that, but you don't really see that at the actual locations. Half the dudes are probably veterans anyway, which is why Antifa largely loses the engagement. But then, all the Antifa people, like, in person, they'll cheer. They'll tell you proudly about the fact that they're happy. They were talking about how he had the thin blue line insignia there, and that meant he was a fascist. It's funny, there was a different episode. I think this was even in the last hour, Andy No reporting on that. By the way, if you're not following him, link in the description, by the way, you can see his little write-up. If you're not following Andy No on Twitter or some other site, he's got very good reporting from actual on-the-ground sort of things going on around the country. Definitely an interesting thing to follow, especially this time of day, or night. If you're in the United States, I think right now it's 2:30 in the morning Eastern. The night has just begun in the West Coast, and already Antifa's managed to kill another person. But apparently, at a gas station, somebody was trying to prevent Antifa members from trashing it. By the way, when you attack a gas station, Antifa really likes like Molotovs and shit. Don't you think that could be itself definite terrorism? At least in that situation. But it seems like the police don't even fucking bother to respond. You've got random civilians and militias showing up to do the work that the cops aren't allowed to do. The cops are totally outmatched, and the fact is that Trump should send in about 1,000 Marines and Portland would be a peace festival very quickly. They'd take care of it. Send in an A-10 Warthog. Send in 5 or 6 of them. That'll clear out Antifa real quick. And just cut them down in the streets or something, the terrorists anyway. I say that in a half tongue-in-cheek manner. I disavow political violence, unlike the leftists. But he was trying to defend this gas station, and they basically chased him inside, and they started shouting about how he was a Nazi. It's funny because that's sort of like the rallying cry. In order to get someone attacked who really is, they don't know anything about their politics, they could have voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary, all they have to do is shout Nazi, and all of a sudden all of these other people start windmilling and going crazy because they're lemmings. They're like ants. This is how Antifa and similar groups tend to operate. They're basically drones. There's not a whole lot going on upstairs, so to speak. And so they can't think in terms of anything other than vague sloganeering. They're very easily controlled individuals. I mean, if you could convince them that you were an anti-fascist, you could probably work them up and get you to do basically whatever you wanted as long as you were skilled in rhetoric. It's only a matter of time before some charismatic instigator manages to worm their way into Antifa and get them to self-destruct. By the way, when that happens, a lot of people, unfortunately, will probably die. And I guarantee these groups try to infiltrate one another all the time. Remember when they tried to say that Antifa was clashing with far-right militias like Proud Boys and stuff there in, what was it, DC a few days ago, and it turned out that it's likely that those were just another group of Antifa that had dressed up and were LARPing in order to get news coverage and convince people that the violence was spiraling out of control. Interesting psyop. So yeah, another Antifa-related death. We've had plenty of them, but the legacy media won't admit to it. They won't chalk this up to far-left violence being responsible for this dude getting killed. If they don't find the shooter, they'll say, well, he's probably just killed by a stray fire from another evil Trump supporter or something like that. I guess he had like a Trump 2020 hat or something like that. Obviously, if you support the police and you know, you plan to vote for the dude with the R as opposed to the D after his name, that makes you a fascist. And obviously far right. Now, I think Patriot Prayer is more on the religious right sort of thing, or like a TradCon group, and I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. But we all know what Antifa stands for. They've given us the last 90 days to show us exactly what they have in their manifests. Wanton random violence. The most of their victims are just walking down the fucking street, or they happen to own a shop on the wrong block, on the block that Antifa decides that they're going to burn to the ground that night. These are the people, most of the people that are being killed, that are being assaulted, that are having homes or businesses attacked, that are being harassed in the middle of the night as Antifa marches through the suburbs beating drums and shining spotlights in people's homes. 90% of these people have no political motivation in their reactions whatsoever. They're literally just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I would argue the wrong place at the wrong time is specifically now in any major city. At least a major city that's run by the Democratic Party. You will note an extreme degree of overlap between left politicians running the place and Antifa suddenly and spontaneously, because of course it's not organized at all, wink wink nudge nudge, growing in numbers there and whipping looters into a frenzy. And they're loving it. They're having a great time. They should all be charged. You know, we have all this facial recognition software and drones and all this stuff, and the government wants to use it to weed through your trash at night to make sure that you're not a jihadist or something. Why isn't it using that same technology that fundamentally violates the Fourth Amendment on 10 different levels on a day-to-day basis? Why are they so unwilling to use it to unmask these Antifa members, so to speak? Could it be because a lot of the people in our government are basically, they have similar beliefs? For political reasons, they don't want the rioting to stop. They want it to continue. They don't care how many people die. And then, by the way, these militias are acting in a perfectly lawful manner. Yeah, it's perfectly lawful for people to defend other people's property, too. You're in a public space. You're allowed to carry your weapon. There's no law against it in as far as I know, any of these locations. You can carry your weapon. You can stand there. If someone else is attacking you, you have the right to defend yourself. It's kind of self-explanatory. You form a human chain around the gas station, and you can defend it. Property owners are helping one another. You've got rooftop Koreans, literally. You've got rooftop cheeseheads in Kenosha by now. Of course, it's not really quelling the violence. The feds moving in, I guess, helps a little, or the National Guard. Ted Wheeler's nuts. Whitmer's nuts. All these blue state mayors and governors are nuts. None of them are doing their jobs. And they know full well they're what they're doing. They're not doing this. It's not out of ignorance and incompetence. In a few cases that we might just say, well, this person's out to lunch. In most cases, it's politically motivated. So yeah, another death. The responsible party, the legacy media, and the DNC for causing this problem in the first place through their sensationalistic bullshit. That's about all. Peace out.